All right, looks like we're at 12:02 here, so we'll go ahead and get started with our session. Thank you all for joining today. Today we are going through our Coupa R43 webinar, so for the upcoming release. Just a few housekeeping items before we jump into the material. First, around audio, you all will be listening by default on your computer speakers, and everyone who joins will also be muted. Questions, we have a couple people monitoring the chat and Q&A option to handle questions. Additionally, we will have some time at the end for a Q&A. And then for objectives, our objective for today is to really go through the key updates with R43 and walk through the impacts to your Coupa system so you all have a good understanding of those impacts. And then we'll also talk through CrossCountry's just overall release management offerings. Looking at our agenda for today, we'll start off just by introducing the meeting facilitators. We will then talk through CrossCountry's release offerings, and then we'll get into the meat of the presentation, so those R43 updates, and then with any time remaining, we'll go through a Q&A and a wrap-up. So I will start off by introducing myself. My name is Andrew Meslenka. I am a consultant in our Coupa practice here. I have a little over of 3 years of experience in Coupa implementations and procurement transformation. Been a part of over 25 projects in those spaces, and I also lead our procure to pay and direct spend center of excellences. I'm going to pass it off to Kayla so she can go ahead and introduce herself.
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. My name's Kayla Upham. I am a manager here at our practice. Been on the team for about 6 years now, 5 of which were focused on the delivery side, so net new implementations spanning about 25 countries. I now sit as a leader in our post-production support practice and really excited to be here and provide some insight from that perspective. Joni?
Hey everyone, I'm Joni. I've been with CrossCountry for 3 years. I've been working with Coupa for over 5 years now, and I sit on the implementation side of the Coupa pod. I work primarily with change management, but I do work with module implementations as well, and I'm excited to talk about all the enhancements.
Awesome. Thank you both. And also on the call with us today, we have Tiffany Monday. She leads our training pillar at CrossCountry, and you all will hear from her a bit later on CrossCountry's training as a service. And then we also have Michael Collins and Kevin Fernandez monitoring the chat for any Q&A. All right, so we want to start off just talking through CrossCountry's additional services and training as a service. So we'll start off here with Coupa post-production support, or Coupa PPS. As you heard Kayla mention, she is a part of that team. And as most of you all know, as you go through your Coupa implementation, once you go live, we have our 4 weeks or more of hypercare. And then following hypercare, you all will roll off to really be maintained by Coupa support. Coupa post-production support, really their goal is to go above and beyond and really provide some additional help and support for you all in your Coupa journey. And that really falls into 4 buckets that we see here, right? So we have procure to pay, supplier enablement, release management, and health checks. In my mind, the 3 that are the most important are supplier enablement, release management, and health checks. When it comes to supplier enablement, really getting the main value out of Coupa is getting those suppliers onboarded and transacting with you all in the Coupa environment. Our PPS team can provide additional supplier enablement support in the form of maybe an additional onboarding strategy, supplier training, comms, things of that nature. We then have release management, so things like an impact assessment for an upcoming update, any regression testing, and just overall testing strategy for new updates. And then we have health checks, right? So I would definitely recommend these on an annual or biannual basis, just to make sure your Coupa system is running as efficiently as possible from a configuration perspective, and you don't have any unnecessary bottlenecks and things of that nature. At a high level, Our PPS team supports over 250 clients. We have more than 30 team members worldwide, over 85 countries supported, and we process over 800 tickets monthly. They are an excellent group, and I think from a perspective of supporting you on your Coupa journey, can really help you get the most out of Coupa and contribute to a lot of success with your Coupa system. So just something to keep in mind today as we go through the R43 enhancements, future updates, and anything else you're thinking about, maybe enhancing in your Coupa system. So with all that being said, that brings us to our first polling question. You will see this pop up on your screen and we'll give folks about 30 seconds to answer. So the question is, today, are your Coupa admins up to date with their certifications to really get the most out of Coupa and maximize your platform's value? And again, here we'll give folks about 30 seconds and then we will review the answers. Another couple seconds here. All right, so looking at the results, it looks like about 30% of you are certified within the past year. Another 30% of you within 2 to 3 years, and then the rest are kind of outside of that 3-year period. That is pretty good numbers from an overall perspective, just thinking about staying up to date on your Coupa certifications, but definitely something you want to emphasize just to make sure you're getting the most out of your Coupa experience and really maintaining the platform in an effective manner. And I think that segues us nicely into Tiffany talking about training as a service.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Tiffany Scarlett, and I lead our training as a service practice, which means I get to hang out in great calls like this and share two of my favorite things. The first one is that CrossCountry is actually one of only a few partners that Coupa trusts and empowers to lead their certification classes. That means we have an opportunity to offer the same certification that we as consultants take. This is done about every 6 weeks via Zoom. It's a 3-day course if you're looking to be admin certified, and 2 days if you're looking for procurement or invoice management certifications. We love these classes because they're interactive. It is your opportunity to work in a pre-configured instance and learn how to troubleshoot or do all the cool behind the scenes things you see us as consultants do. These classes were so impactful and received such great feedback that it actually led to my second favorite thing, which is our newer offering of custom training. This means we do the same thing for you in your instance. So it's setting up labs for your teams to get that hands-on practice of actually doing in the system instead of just watching. And we have found that teams that add this effort to their implementations or even post-production feel so much more confident in the system. Custom training also helps us prepare QRGs, short videos, a whole library of quick hit resources for your team. If you are interested or have any questions, we actually offer discounts for our PPS clients. So you can reach out to me directly or anyone you're engaged with on the CrossCountry side who will help you get some more information. Thanks, Andrew.
Awesome. Thanks, Tiffany. Moving forward, the next thing that we really want to focus on are just the 5 key release management offerings from CrossCountry. So first off is our release reference guide, which most of you should have received. Really, it's just a high-level email guide walking through a lot of the updates, and in this case for R43. In addition to that, we have our release webinars, which we are on today. It can be very beneficial just to get a more interactive experience to see what's coming in Coupa. System health checks. So like we discussed, just making sure that your system is functioning as effectively as possible, heading into upcoming updates or system upgrades. Regression testing, so getting ahead of the updates, making sure everything is good to go in your test environment before it makes its way into production. and then release impact assessments. And for release impact or release management assessments, we do have really 3 buckets of those assessments as we see here. So from left to right, we have the high-level impact assessment, we have the full-scale impact assessment, and then we have the new feature assessment. Starting with the high-level impact assessment, CrossCountry will work with you all to really determine the features impacted by the upcoming upgrade. And then from there, you can work with the CrossCountry team to really test those impacts and make sure your system is good to go. Then we have the full-scale impact assessment. And this is similar to if you think back to your project implementation, user acceptance testing. So here you'll really identify what's being impacted by the upcoming update, and you'll work with your CrossCountry team to go through test scripts for those impacted scenarios and really figure out what needs to be changed, if anything, and make sure your system is good to go. And then finally, we have the new feature assessment. And this would be in the form of a ticket to the PPS team for a new feature that needs to be tested. And this will kick off sort of a mini project around that feature using or similar to our standard methodology. So getting the feature configured, testing it, going through a smaller move to production and hypercare, just to make sure everything is working in your system as expected. That brings us to our next polling question, and it is, when was the last time your organization conducted a health check or regression testing? And this can be before an update, this can just be in general. Again, definitely something that we would recommend doing just to make sure your Coupa system is working the best that it possibly can. And similar to before, we'll give folks about 30 seconds to answer before we get into the results. All right. So it looks like about 60% of you within the past 12 months have conducted regression testing or a health check, and the last 40% have really been outside of that 18-month timeline. Again, I would definitely recommend these on at least a biannual basis just to make sure everything is running as smoothly as possible in your Coupa environment. So just something to consider with the upcoming R43 update and in the future as well. All right, so that really brings us to our R43 release highlights. I will start with a timeline and then hand it off to Joni. So here we can see the timeline for the R43 release in both test and production environments. For test, we have Wave 0, which will begin on August 18th. Wave 1 will also begin on August 18th, and then Wave 2 will be August 25th, all of 2025. And then in production, we have Wave 1, 2, and 3. Wave 1, that will be on August 29th. Wave 2 will be September 4th, and then Wave 3 will be September 19th. So depending on where you sit in each release wave, as you can see, we just have some different dates for when the R43 update will become available in both environments. So just something to pay attention to and keep in mind as we go through the material. And that brings us to our first release highlight, where I'll hand it off to Joni.
Hello. We're starting off with a really cool one, and that is a time-based update for Process Automator. In this update, you're able to trigger a process where you can send a contract to sourcing. This is a baby step into a larger, probably into a larger enhancement for Process Automator, but it's really cool for if you have a process where you are tracking expiring contracts and you want to send those to a sourcing event before you renew them. This is a really cool enhancement, and it's the first time-based trigger that we have available. Our second one here is for an extension for how to receive your scheduled reports. In the past, after a period of time, you would be asked to confirm whether you want to continue receiving your scheduled reports. That time period has now extended, which helps prevent any gaps in your data. It also helps you prevent sending sensitive data out when you don't need to anymore. Now, we're going to continue going through each of these enhancements as we go, and I'll kick it off. We'll keep going with, oh, we're moving to the next one. I was trying to click on the screen. Andrew, you clicked before? Oh, all right. This is my personal favorite from the batch. We can prevent approval escalations when a valid approver exists. If you have a approval chain and you have self-approvals turned off, having a delegate auto configured via this setting means that you're not skipping an important approval node. In the past, not having this feature meant that your approval chain would get stuck or it would auto skip. And this will help you keep a direct line in your delegation of authority and your approvals without having to do very much additional configuration. Another exciting feature is this document access for mentioned users. In the past, you could comment on a document and a user may or may not have been able to see the document that they were being tagged on based on their visibility. This gives you a little box, a little pop-up that says, hey, I'm tagging this person on this document. I also want to add them as a watcher to be able to see beyond this part of the system. The only drawback here, or not drawback, but a note here that your content grouping remains in place. So if you are tagging someone on a document that they did not already have access to because of content group restrictions, this is not going to give them access to the documents. But it does, if they already had access via content grouping, this does give them additional visibility. Andrew, you want to scoot us forward? All right. You may have seen in a previous update that we had a health chain approval chain health insight view for requisition headers, where you were able to track the efficiency of your approval chains for requisition headers. This has been expanded to include PO changes, expense reports, both really important, invoices, contracts, and a couple other features. This also includes an additional view and a reporting, so you're able to see where these approvals are getting stuck over time, and where you may need to do some tweaking or some refining. This is a really cool expansion, and it went really well tested with the requisition headers. One small update for the CSP is that the remit to address is moving to the legal entity. It was previously attached to the payment method, and now it is the legal entity remit to address and then payment method. The admin in the supplier admin is still able to update these over time. All right. This is a really, really neat feature. So if you are, if you have a use case where your buyers are releasing your purchase orders as instead of having them be released as they are approved, this is a way for you to schedule those to be sent. So as the purchase requisition is set up, you say, hey, I want this to be issued on such and such date, so long as the requisition is approved by that date. This means that there is one less button for your buyers to go click and say, hey, I'm going to release this. Now, if you do use this feature and your requisition is not approved by the time the issuance date that you set comes around, it gets auto sent as soon as it's approved. So, and Coupa is not going to give you not just an issue date, but a retry date. So you can say, if it's approved before this date, send it on this date. And if not by this date, send it on my retry date. Otherwise, it's going to auto send as soon as it's approved. You can also unschedule this feature if your issuance date changes. This is a really great way to plan when your suppliers are going to be receiving orders, and help you kind of manage maybe inventory flow that you don't want an order going out too early or too late. This is a really neat update. There is an improvement in the catalog user experience. Previously, it was a little bit difficult to get to the screen where you could see all catalogs. There's a new button in the drop-down form to see this all catalogs. And you can also include it in this catalog experience update is the ability to compare 10 items from catalogs at a time instead of catalog updating and comparing 3. And you'll now have a minimum order quantity warning directly on the item rather than in the cart. I have a previous client that uses order list really heavily, so I'm very excited about this order list update. In the past, to create an order list, you would have to go to the create order list page and then search your items one by one and add them all on that page. Now you can add an item to an order list directly from the general search instead. So as you are going about your regular buying, you can say, hey, I'm buying this enough that I'm going to add it to such and such order list. And you can update those more directly rather than having to go through the order list creation screen. It gives you a little bit quicker way to manage your order lists over time. And then this is an enhancement for the approvers. Previously, the banner was pretty straightforward. When an approver was receiving notifications, there's something for you to approve. It would just say, hey, requisition number such and such, or document number such and such is waiting your approval. Now it includes a brief summary of the document and shows key fields such as the supplier, the requester, and the total, so that you have a little bit better insight into what you're being asked to approve and can prioritize those approvals better as those notifications come in. And then there is this really awesome feature for buyers who are working in the pending buyer action queue. In pending buyer action, there's a new AI enhancement that says, based on previous orders that have come through that looked like this is what we think the value should be for the ones that are missing. So AI is able to suggest commodity, department, contract payment terms, some of these fields that are often requiring a little bit more research in order to fill. AI is going to look back into the purchasing history and say, hey, this is what we think it is. Now, these are the first set of our enhancements. I'm going to kick it back to Andrew for our next polling question, and then over to Kayla.
Thank you, Joni. So time for our third and final polling question. And which Coupa modules are you interested in learning more about or implementing in the future? And again, similar to the other ones, about 30 seconds to answer, and then we'll go over the results. And this is just helpful for us to really understand what you all, as our client base, is kind of interested in learning most about. And also, if we need to prep to really get things implemented in the future, it just gives us a good idea of what's to come. All right, so it looks like we have a pretty big grouping around Coupa Core or P2P, and then a lot around Coupa Pay and analytics as well. I think that's great, especially around analytics, right? More reporting in Coupa is always better and more helpful. So definitely great results here, and I think very aligned with what we're seeing in the marketplace. And now I will hand it off to Kayla to go through our release highlights.
Thanks, Andrew. All right, so kicking off the second half of our R43 release highlights, we're starting with invoicing. And this is my particular favorite of the R43 updates. So previously, when you were hoping to withdraw or dispute an invoice, it had to be in a very specific status. It had to be rejected first. Now, regardless of whether it was submitted by the supplier or your internal AP team, you have some options to withdraw and then dispute more than we did before. And this is on by default, so your AP team should have a little bit more flexibility there with managing those invoices that need to be removed from the queue. The second one is an expansion of submission blocker functionality. So previously, any submission blockers for invoices did not apply to invoices that were coming in via integrated channels. So any of your punch outs or suppliers that you may have an SFTP set up for. So now you can enable this functionality. It's not on by default, but if you would like your submission blockers to apply to the integrated invoices, you can optionally toggle that feature on. Next up is a release highlight that is specific to the suppliers functionality in the CSP. So again, something that you would have to enable from your side so the suppliers can use this functionality, but they now have the option to pick lines and create an invoice line for PO receipts that have not previously been invoiced. So any receipts that your team creates in the system would show up for the supplier, and they can then use those from a pick line functionality to create the invoice line. There are some limitations here. So this does not work for your standard three-way matching. It would need to be for the first in, first out, or three-way direct matching. So the legacy three-way does not apply here. It would be for the other three-way options. And then finally, on the invoice smash side, we have some new custom enrichment rules available. So you can, in the new like super smash in core, invoice smash that's now in core, you have the option to create essentially different rules a little bit more flexibly than you used to be able to. So the example we have here would be, for this supplier, assign this chart of account all the time. And so the options there could be really flexible, really helpful for the AP team just to automate some of that invoice creation that's coming through Invoice Smash. And this is on by default, so something that the team can start using right when it rolls out. Okay, one release highlight on the inventory side. So now in the CXML errors table that you can find in the Integration Control Center, there are references to ASNs. This was not previously in the table, so you'll now see a trend line and an error summary table specific to ASNs that suppliers are submitting to you. This isn't on by default, but it does require specific permissions to access this table. Okay, so shifting over to the expenses module, there are some updates in the AI receipt parsing world. This is something that Coupa continuously is updating over the years. We've seen a lot of growth within the receipt parsing and wallet functionality of the expenses module, so it's pretty exciting. With this release, you should find that you are manually entering less details onto your expense line than before. It does need to be enabled under the setup menu. It's an AI service that you would need to toggle on. But once on, you can have potentially your expense category, taxes, location, details that weren't previously coming from the receipt. Coupa can now read those via the AI functionality. If you have any expense categories that have been deactivated or are content grouped in a way where that specific user can't access it, it won't default those categories. So they do have to be active and applicable in terms of content grouping. Exciting feature also for expenses. We now have the option to bulk import billing codes for split billing. This was something that was only able to be done before on the invoicing or the requisition side. So really exciting that now, if necessary, split billing can be bulk uploaded. If you have more than 5-10 lines of split billing, this is a great option just to speed things up. And it is on by default, so anyone that has the ability to change the billing will have the ability to bulk import it. Okay, really exciting feature here and marking it as Andrew's favorite, which I think is very appropriate. So there is now a Coupa card that is available through virtual payments. This it's like a card that you can access in the mobile app and then add to your Apple Pay or Google Pay wallet. So really great option for maybe a prepaid expenses approval. You know, somebody submits that they're going to need X amount of dollars for a work trip. It's pre-approved. You can have it loaded to a virtual card that they can then use directly from their phone. Any of our standard virtual card use cases are going to be applicable for this Coupa card. So really exciting to see how, you know, various teams roll this out. One call out though is for the September to December period. So the rest of the year here, Coupa is doing a more limited rollout of this functionality. So if you are interested in it, you'd want to reach out to them and start that underwriting process. But whether or not they are able to get you in this first sort of pilot group or when it officially goes live for all customers in January 2026, that'll be, you know, up to Coupa, but there is an underwriting process. So if this is something that interests you, then definitely reach out to the Coupa Pay team. All right, so staying on the pay side, something that you may have heard from Coupa already, they have been sending out notifications on this. So there have been some daily direct debit limit updates for TransferMate. So this is in effect starting at the beginning of September, and there are going to be daily $2 million limits per currency. So if you're sending out payment batches in multiple currencies, each of those can have up to 2 million in equivalent USD for that day. Anything that goes past the $2 million limit, there are two options. So if you have reverse wire enabled, then the batch essentially gets converted and processed as a next day payment by reverse wire. If you do not have reverse wire enabled, the batch will just sort of stay, pause, you can release it the next day, and it'll count toward the next day's 2 million limit. So you'll want to make sure that your company financial accounts are set up to support reverse wire. If not, it's something that you'll have to work with Coupa. There's an amendment form that you can fill out. It's a pretty easy form, but something that you will need to enable, or else the batch would just simply wait to be released the next day. Okay, and then on the invoice payments table, so we have two tables that are now going to include the invoice date, which is a really nice piece of information to include in a payments table. So under the pay screen, there's the payment details table and the invoices to pay table. Those both will now include the invoice date. So you don't have to sort of like toggle between two screens to figure out what the invoice date was. That will just be there for your ease in reporting. All right, sticking with pay, lots of pay updates this round. So payment instructions, we now have the option to auto fill them. This is on by default. So anywhere that there was a previously completed successful payment from that same account, you have the option to then just use the prior payment instructions, and it will help automate your processing, make things a little bit smoother. Anytime you have a brand new account, you'll have to, of course, set that up, payment instructions, but moving forward with ones that you've used before successfully, you can just sort of default and move forward with your payment processing. And then on the payments page, so pretty much all of the payment subtabs now, you can see the list here on the bottom right of the screen. They all have the newer UI rolling out with R43. So some of the UI has been updated across the system, and like the supplier table, the invoices table, this is now impacting the payments pages. So across most, if not all of them, you should see the newer looking table. hopefully you like the new table. Like most of the rest of the system, you can typically toggle back to the original table, but that's going to be eventually deprecated by Coupa. Sorry, thanks, Andrew. Okay, so now talking about the mobile app. So we have the option in Coupa Expenses on the mobile app to now upload multiple receipts. So this is really exciting. Somebody doesn't have to like attach one receipt at a time. They can send up to 10 receipts at a time, and Coupa can, from those 10 receipts, create 10 expense lines. Really exciting automation. You know, we want people to submit their expenses in a timely manner, and this is certainly going to help them do that. A call out here, this is only going to work with the most up-to-date version of the mobile app. And I believe that Coupa requires you to update the mobile app anyway. But once R43 hits the prod environments, we'd expect that to then hit the mobile app as well. So this isn't going to be enabled just yet, but next month we should see it rolled out in the mobile app. And then I believe this is our last expenses update here, but really exciting. Any of your currencies that you have enabled in your Coupa instance, in the web instance, are now available in the Coupa mobile app for expenses. Previously, it was just USD or whatever like the main currency of that user was. And so now they have the option to select any of your active currencies and any applicable exchange rates. And so that should help with processing their expenses. They don't need to, log in on their computer. They can now complete that from their mobile app. All right, I'll hand it back to Andrew. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kayla. So a bit of a shorter release webinar today. There weren't a ton of updates with R43, but I think there's some very impactful ones, right? The virtual card integration to your phone, that's excellent. The transfer rate limit, that will impact all of our clients using Coupa Pay potentially, so just something to pay attention to. And I think a lot of valuable stuff with expenses as well. But at a high level, today, really, we went through what is coming with R43 and then also the impact that it has, right? So to give you guys some idea of how your Coupa system will change in the future. If you do have any questions on this and just overall release management support, if you are not on PPS, you can reach out to Matt Consavage or Kayla here on the call. From our PPS team. If you are an existing customer, you can go ahead and create a hub ticket for any R43 questions or support. So that's all the material that we had to cover for today. However, now we'll open it up for questions, and Michael and Kevin, feel free to jump in if there's anything in the chat that you feel is important that you think we need to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. Great session. Appreciate it. Everybody joined today and all the topics that we covered. A couple of items that were asked in the chat. Folks were looking to see for the Coupa virtual card, if that was available with the core product or if that required having Coupa Pay enabled and purchasing that module, which that is part of Coupa Pay specifically. So if that's an option that you're interested in, maybe if you looked at Coupa Pay in the past and this is something that they push you over the edge as a use case, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to talk about that and connect you with your Coupa sales rep to do a demo or talk further about how you can best utilize that tool, not just not this new feature, but all the features with Coupa Pay. Another question came in about the AI summary banners and mentioned that they had AI disabled in their system previously. Taking a look, the summary banners are their own setting within the system, so that's generative within Coupa. There's a separate generative AI setting that requires opting into terms and conditions, which I believe is what was being referenced that was not turned on previously for the platform. So those are separate settings. Would obviously need some more details to completely answer that. So if you want to reach out separately, please feel free to, and we can look at the specific settings for you, but those are separate in the company information page. And then last, someone asked about how you can confirm which wave you are a part of. So Kayla mentioned there you can open a Coupa support ticket through Compass as you would for any other support issue and request that information from Coupa support. You can also determine that based off of notifications coming from the system. So any of your users that have that upgrade administrator role are going to get notifications for those upcoming maintenance dates. And that table that Andrew showed that'll be in this deck for you guys, you can align that to identify which wave you are in. You are able to request being moved to different waves. It's not something that you should do every time, but if you want to look at your overall landscape and the amount of time that you need for each major release to do your testing and evaluation, you may want to give yourself longer stretches, move into an earlier wave in test and a later wave in production, or you may want to keep them closer together if you want your two environments to stay on the same release for longer periods of time. So certainly a personal decision for how you handle things, but if you have any questions on that, again, we're happy to help give you insights and direction on that too. And that was all we had in Q&A.
Awesome. Just a reminder, we do have the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. It's not the most straightforward to submit questions, so we'll give it another 5 or 10 seconds, and if not, I think we're good to wrap up. Anything else, Michael?
Nope, nothing in there. Thanks.
All right, I think we are good to go. Thank you all for joining. Again, as you go through the really R43 release journey, if you have any questions, please reach out to us and we will help you through those. Thanks, everyone.